Number 9. Spy with Enforcer, Dead Ringer, Your Eternal Reward, and Red Tape Recorder. This is the least bad of each class's worst possible loadout, and it's worth noting I'm not deciding the worst loadout based on each class just by using the worst item in each slot. In many cases, it's a matter of finding what items have the worst synergy with each other. In the case of the Red Tape, it's a matter of just being overall less consistent than the Sapper. Sorry, Red Tape stands. But for the other three, most of them are not necessarily bad. I mean, I'm of the opinion that Spy has no outright bad weapons, but they have terrible combo power. The Your Eternal Reward makes disguises cost your entire cloak meter, but this also disables your Dead Ringer, which itself needs a full meter to function. Not to mention, having the Dead Ringer equipped removes your ability to restore cloak from ammo, so two items are fighting over the same resource. Then the Enforcer, having one of its upsides being tied to shooting while disguised, doesn't help either when they're much harder to just get. And again, while all of this sounds bad, and it is, it's still here on the list because it's the most usable one. Not counting the entire video I made about this loadout where I pub stomped with it, but playing around with it again, this is the one loadout where I most consistently went on kill streaks. This could be attributed to the fact I'm a Spy main, so there may be bias there, but there was still a decent amount of strategy that could be used to get kills with this combo. Though I would encounter many times where I had to wait for my cloak to regenerate twice just to disguise and have my feign ready before attacking. It probably also helped that because using the Yer and DR together is such a bizarre strategy, many people probably didn't even expect me to feign death. Even when they did notice, it wasn't common knowledge of how to fight a Spy like this. While it is still by all means the worst possible loadout on Spy, it's still not completely terrible and can be a fun challenge. Number 8. Scout with Backscatter, Criticola, and Sandman. Now the Backscatter is just a worse scattergun except for the fact it mini crits when hitting targets in the back from close range, but it has anti-synergy with the Criticola since it makes you do mini crits regardless. So while under the effect of the Cola, the Backscatter just becomes a direct downgrade to stock. Then you have the Sandman. Sure, it gives you the ball projectile, but it also reduces your health by 15 passively, making you die more easily, something very important on Scout. However, this one is only number 8 because it doesn't sacrifice Scout's biggest strength, that being his mobility. Scout is just as agile as he normally is with this loadout, and while you may die more, you're still above that 100 health threshold, and a slightly worse scattergun is still a scattergun. If you're good at Scout, this loadout is still totally usable, albeit highly unoptimal. Because playing this isn't too different from playing Scout normally in terms of strategy, it was still fun to play as. I had the second most consistent performance with this loadout, just behind the Spy one. However, from this point onwards, the usability of these loadouts takes a massive nosedive. Number 7. Heavy with Brass Beast, Buffalo Steak Sandwich, and Eviction Notice. Brass Beast is a case of worst in slot. It's not unusable, but my god, having made How to Man heavy only a few months ago, I can really feel how slow this thing is. You really need good positioning and good teammates to back you up to do well with this thing. Not to mention, you lack any self-healing since you're using the Buffalo Steak. The melee, the Eviction Notice, drains your max health while you hold it out. So you should avoid holding it out, right? Yes, but upon eating the Buffalo Steak, it forces you to hold it out for 16 seconds. I'll admit, running around with the Eviction Notice and the Steak was fun, and it breaks up the slow of playing Brass Beast heavy. But it was only really effective against people who were caught off guard or just not very good at the game. And I don't think a loadout that relies on the strategy of hope the enemy sucks at the game is a very reliable loadout. Number 6. Medic with Syringe Gun, Quick Fix, and Vitasaur. Unlike previous entries, this one is entirely a case of using the worst weapon in each slot, as there's no particular anti-synergy here. Now, all of the syringe guns are suboptimal when crossbow exists, enabling you to actually be doing what you want to as medic. It's not even close. But among the syringe guns, stock is easily the worst. Blutsauger and Overdose at least have some utility, albeit nowhere close to the crossbow. This is also one of only 2 stock weapons to actually appear on this list. Can you guess what the other one is that shows up later? Comment what you guessed it was, and if you guessed right. And no cheating, don't just skip ahead, that doesn't make you smart. Next we have the Quick Fix. Nowhere near not crossbow terrible, but Overheal is very strong, and that is cut in half. And then there's the Uber Charge, which I reckon is the weakest Uber type in the game. It can be useful, but all too often, mass amounts of burst damage will kill me, or just Sniper or Spy doing the things that they do. Then there's the Vitasaur, easily the worst medic melee as it relies on you hitting people to retain Uber on death, but only if you had that much Uber when you died and assuming you didn't use it before dying. it actually does have a slight anti-synergy with the quick fix, given the quick fix also builds Uber relatively fast. The downside reduces your health by 10, which as the class that wants to stay alive the most, you can imagine is a big problem. This loadout was pretty miserable, mostly due to not having the crossbow. So many times I'd see teammates that I could help if I had the crossbow, but nope. You can call me a meta slave all you want, but to try and imply that the syringe guns are anywhere near the crossbow in terms of usefulness and power would have me lying so hard that my pants would cause a supernova. Number 5. Engineer with Rescue Ranger, Short Circuit, and Gunslinger. This is very much a case of not using the worst items in each slot, since this loadout doesn't involve the Thompson, Engineer's worst weapon and one of the worst in the entire game. But no, here we have a primary that is intentionally designed to suck as a weapon and uses metal up when using its upsides, and a secondary, which can be used as a weapon, but usually only to complement a competent primary weapon, and it eats through metal as ammo as well. Then let's just replace our sentry with a mini sentry so the sustain that the Rescue Ranger provides to the sentry is near useless due to how replaceable our sentry is. Despite using what is basically the battle NG item, you cannot play that way because both of your weapons are hot cow dung. I debated having the Widowmaker as the primary, but it can give you a surplus of metal if you hit your shots, and we want to make the upsides of as many weapons as we can redundant. The Wrangler also works well on minis given you can increase their damage, max range, and effective health using the Wrangler. And while the Eureka effect reduces metal collected from ammo, the teleport is still useful, and so are level 3 sentries. The result is a loadout that is genuinely painful to attempt to use. You can't hold your ground well with a mini, and you can't battle NG without a proper weapon. The only amount of success I've had with this loadout is just leeching off of another engineer's nest, aggressively replacing my mini and putting my dispenser and teleporter with his. Number 4, Pyro with Phlogistonator, Gas Passer, and Fire Axe. This one just makes you feel like a heavily gimped Pyro. Well, because it is. The Gas Passer is just the worst item in Pyro's secondary slot, and the Flog, while having the very scary Oomph mechanic, lacks Air Blast entirely, making you very weak against soldiers and demos. The lack of an effective secondary to make up for the lack of Air Blasts makes it suck even more, meaning you just have to hope some idiot runs into your flamethrower range, or you sneak up on them, and that they don't subsequently kill you shortly after. Once you actually do get your Oomph, you may be able to run in and kill a few people, often only one, but you really have to play like a free-to-play WM1 Pyro that hasn't discovered Air Blast or the 2 on their keyboard. This one makes you feel pretty damn helpless a lot of the time. Number 3, Sniper with Sydney Sleeper, Razorback, and Tribalman Shiv. This is a terrible combo of low power and low self-defense. The Sydney Sleeper can be funny to piss on people, but the second you peek a sightline with a somewhat competent sniper, bam, you're just dead. Of course, the Razorback is just sort of there. It does allow you to not have to check your back so much, but sometimes the spy can just... But even with backstab blocking, it doesn't make up for the weaknesses of the rest of the loadout. And if a spy does choose to fight you, it's not like you have a very powerful melee to kill them with either, losing half of its damage just to make the enemy bleed for, 6 seconds. In theory, you could use it to track the spy, but if they cloak, it halves the duration of the bleed down to 3 seconds. So yeah, this loadout sucks. You can't do much against other snipers, and if someone attacks you directly, you can't do much against them. This loadout is so aggressively painful and boring to play. Number 2, Timmerman with Booties, Sticky Jumper, and the Clé de Mort. Now while the Sticky Jumper lets you get around more, it can't be used as a weapon, and the Booties are a passive item. This leaves you with only one weapon you can actually deal damage with, bringing us to the real stinker of this loadout, the Clé de Mort. The only upside you get out of this weapon is the larger range, but the other upsides revolve around shield charge, which we don't have, making them completely and utterly void. Now you're left with a melee with slightly bigger range, but a slower deploy and holster speed, no random crits, and increased damage vulnerability. Now you may notice in this gameplay I'm using the base jumper instead of the booties. This is a mistake on my part because I forgot the move speed buff of the booties only applies when you have a shield equipped. Without a shield, the only benefit you get from this is plus 25 max health. Everything else, much like the Clé de Mort, revolves around you having to have a shield. Not to mention, the damage vulnerability while you have the melee out mathematically nullifies the health boost from the booties. Funnily enough though, even with the base jumper, it wouldn't have changed my ranking compared to the other classes. The only real strategy is to sticky jump from above and hope people aren't paying attention. Try to get a kill, and probably die. When doing the version with the base jumper, you can hover in the air for a bit, but it also leaves you quite open to sniper attacks. This is basically just less fun caber bombing demo. Number one. Now, if you've been counting, you'll know that Soldier takes the top spot as having the worst possible loadout in TF2. But what is said loadout? Well, it involves the gunboats, the passive item that reduces self-damage of rockets by 60%.
But the gunboats, you say? It's considered by many to be the literal best secondary on Soldier.
And yes, it is held in high regard for very good reason. However, for this loadout, we are combining it with the rocket jumper. The only Soldier primary that does absolutely no damage. Yeah, the gunboats are literally useless in this loadout. A completely wasted slot. It serves zero purpose. And the melee? The pain train. This is your only means of doing damage, and it gives you an increased vulnerability to bullet damage. What's the upside? Oh, faster capture rate. Yay, something you can get by just switching to Scout. While the rocket jumper allows high speed, it's burst speed, and not as erratic as that of Scout, which allows him to take advantage of his faster cap rate more effectively. So really, you just have to jump at people and hope this thing random crits or your opponents just suck at shooting you. This is nearly on the same level as the Demo Man loadout, but Soldier takes the crown for having the worst loadout on account of the fact he has a literally useless slot. Demo Man at least gets to have one benefit from each item, but the gunboats just sit there doing absolutely nothing. This loadout was awful to play with. It was like playing Troja, but with none of the fun parts.